Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Margot Hunnestead. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Communications for R3 Redistribution and also Bunzl Canada. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you to a webinar to talk about Canada's single-use plastic bans and particularly what they mean for both your business and your customers. It's an important topic today, and we've got a lot of great information to share with you. So thank you again for attending today. It's my pleasure to welcome our expert presenters that are supporting us today with their expertise. So first we have Colin Isaacs. And Colin, I have to look to his background because it's so extensive that I wouldn't be able to recite it for you all. But Colin is the Senior Sustainable Development Analyst with CIAL Group, and they are experts in the design and implementation of advanced environmental and sustainable development strategies. He's a former member of the Legislative Assembly in Ontario. He is also the former director of the Recycling Council of Ontario and the former executive director for Pollution Probe. So Colin has really been on the front line of all things environmental in Canada throughout his career, and is an absolute expert in this area. And he is also an engineer, a chemical engineer, a chemist. I'm sure he'll give you more background on that as he's answering your questions. So he has extensive knowledge and understanding of the makeup of material substrates and their end of their management at end of life. He's also an environmental journalist and publishes the Gallon Environment Letter, which is something you can also subscribe to. We also have Paul Rutherford with us today, and Paul has a 25-year history in food service and grocery distribution. His knowledge of procurement, global sourcing, product development, costing, everything related to really building the right assortment of product given the requirements, fit for purpose, and as well associated market trends, makes him really well positioned to help R3 be positioned really as the Canadian leader in bringing in packaging into Canada that supports and complies with the latest legislation around sustainability and other packaging of products as well. So thank you to both of you. We're going to for joining us, and we're going to just move right into the content of our webinar today for our attendees. So today we're going to be talking about the product categories that have actually been banned in Canada, and we're going to talk more about the legislation and the timelines associated with that and what that really means to you. And then we'll look at what are the available environmentally preferable material alternatives. I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there, a lot of information that people are looking for. We're certainly hearing from customers that there's some confusion, and people are really looking to get a better understanding of what all of this means to them and their customers. Then, of course, we're going to talk about some planet-friendly brands and products that can support your transition to more environmentally preferable and sustainable product assortments. And then really the steps that you need to take to really become the go-to for your customers for environmentally preferable product solutions. So let's move on to what's happening in Canada, shall we, Colin?
Indeed, we should.
All right. And there's a lot. So let's start out with, and we're going to talk about the specifics of this in a few minutes, but we have single-use plastics legislation. We have extended producer responsibility, which is current. We have extended producer responsibility, which is on the horizon. We also have pending PCR or post-consumer recycled content requirements that are also on the horizon. Boy, it's a lot to take in, isn't it, Colin?
It is. In fact, I think it's the largest change in material for products and for packaging that we've ever seen. Environment is having a major impact on the categories that are involved here, particularly plastics.
Yes, and on that note, 6 major categories of single-use plastics are affected. And as I said, we're going to go into quite a bit of detail about that just shortly. But down the track, we're expecting to see extended producer responsibility, which will be costs associated with end-of-life management. And Colin, we're going to see that going right through the supply chain as well. And I think that that type of thing is going to be a topic for future webinars, I'm sure.
I'm sure it will be, and I think there's sufficient information already beginning to flow that those webinars should be fairly soon. EPR means that brand owners, manufacturers, importers, just about everybody in the supply chain is going to be impacted by the costs of end-of-life management. Those costs are being transferred from municipalities to industry, and everybody is going to make sure that the products that they put into the marketplace have an effective end of life in order not to pollute the environment, not to litter, not to get into the oceans. I think a key point to note is that although those programs are already in place in some provinces, about half of our provinces, in fact, they're already being updated in British Columbia and in Ontario, will shortly be updated in the other provinces. And the federal government has made it clear that they want to see EPR in place in every province and every territory of Canada. Unfortunately, the Canadian way is that we don't adopt a national way. We adopt 13 different provincial and territorial ways. But I know that industry associations today are doing everything they can to bring some uniformity to what will otherwise be an even more complex change than it needs to be.
Well, it certainly speaks to, and I think everyone on the webinar today can understand why we work with you, Colin, as a valued partner to us to keep us ahead of the curve on these things and allow us to provide the kind of thought leadership that our customers are looking for. So let's talk a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about the PCR requirements in a moment. I know you're going to talk a little bit more about that, but given all of the transition that's going on right now, the implications of this for you as our attendees that are on the call today really comes down to supply uncertainty in the short term. And the reason, and we're glad that so many of you have attended today, because it really is important to be taking a proactive approach in planning and executing your transition to more environmentally preferable products, isn't it, Colin?
Yes, indeed. The good news is that there are alternatives for the 6 categories that are being phased out by the federal government. It's not as though there's nothing to use or that we're going to be left without needed packaging. But the alternatives are only just coming to market in many cases. The manufacturers are trying to catch up with increasing demand. And retailers, I've noticed too, are not moving as quickly as they probably should in order to make sure they've got an adequate supply of the new alternative materials and products to meet their customers' needs. For example, I was in a couple of retail chains recently. They were still using single-use plastic shopping bags. Well, those bags are going to disappear very soon. The manufacture and import of those has already been banned into Canada. And it doesn't matter whether you want to get them or recognize what the government's trying to achieve to help the environment and agree to phase them out. They are going to be in short supply over the next little while.
Right. So I think Colin. I think Colin.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Colin, if I can just jump in there, just so we can move on, because I know we want to talk about the specifics of the actual legislation, but all to say that we've got really a potential imbalance happening right here at this time because of the fact that, as you say, these manufacturers are transitioning away from the traditional products that they're manufacturing, at the same time moving into the new ones. So we've got, as you said, the catch up with the new products, but we've also got the production of the traditional products has been winding down ever since June, when the actual bans when the actual bans were approved, right? So
That's
just
right.
I think this is where you wanted to go in terms of what's going to be happening, and it's in the future, but my goodness, it's in the very near future, isn't it? 2025.
It is indeed. I mean, look, 100% of plastic packaging has to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable by 2025. That's a massive volume of material, and it's going to be difficult to obtain the reusable, recyclable, or compostable substrates in sufficient quantity to meet society's needs. But the government is mandating that has to be done. Similarly, effective recycling. At the moment of plastic packaging, we're recycling about 9%. Getting from 9% to 50% by 2025 is going to mean tremendous effort by the recycling industry, which, as I explained a couple of minutes ago, will in future be controlled by the manufacturing and distribution and retail industries because they're taking it over under EPR systems. So it's big change coming. By no means impossible, but it takes a bit more planning than I'm seeing in the retail marketplace at the present time.
Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here, where we need to talk about exactly what it means to us right now. We can see, as you say, a lot of change coming, but we've also had some change that has come into effect just recently. So let's just look at that. So we've got our single-use plastic bans that affect 6 major categories. And the ones we're really going to focus on today are the food serviceware, the straws, the cutlery, the stir sticks, and the checkout bags particularly, but ring carriers are also part of that ban. And I think, people on the call are very familiar with what these food serviceware items are, but what they probably don't, are probably not as well versed in is what exactly we mean by hard to recycle plastics. And that's where you're an absolute authority, Colin. So tell us about that.
Well, hard to recycle categories are several. One is plastics that are not easy to identify and therefore become mixed up with non-recyclable plastics. And the recycling industry has great difficulty sorting them out at high expense, I should add, and recycling the recyclable ones and discarding the others. So the government has said, rather than trying to cope with that, we will label hard to recycle plastics as non-recyclable, and they will be banned if they're currently being used for food serviceware. There's plenty of alternatives there. Similarly with straws, they too are a hard to recycle component. There are about 3 categories of plastic as well, which are hard to recycle, not just from a confusion point of view, but from a technical point of view. The recycling industry doesn't want them. They're difficult to process. They're difficult to turn into new product. So the government has chosen to say, we can live without those as well. And so it goes on. Cutlery, stir sticks, there's good alternatives for those. The supply may be tight, but with decent planning, it's possible to obtain either recyclable or reusable cutlery and stir sticks, or to find materials that are easy to recycle and therefore will still be permitted. Checkout bags, of course, have been the bad guy for a long time now. Most retail chains, food chains at least, have been getting out of plastic single-use checkout bags, but there's still a lot in the marketplace in smaller businesses and in some of the non-food retail sectors. And bear in mind that sold doesn't just mean sold for money. The ban applies to actual use of single-use checkout bags by any retail establishment, even if they're being given away. So you need to think about where you're using single-use checkout bags and make sure that you're not reliant on the kind of bags that are going to disappear from the marketplace in Canada. And indeed, not just Canada, but other places as well.
Right. So, Colin, I think one of the things that and we've certainly had lots of conversation about it is the black plastics, where you know, perhaps not intuitive for a lot of consumers would tend to think that, you know, black plastic is black plastic and plastic's recyclable and therefore, and yet that's really a particularly problematic one in terms of getting mixed in with other recyclables, isn't it?
That's right. Separation of black plastic from clear and white plastic is very difficult and very expensive, and it's not being done. If black plastic is recycled along with white and clear plastic, you end up with a gray material which is unacceptable for reuse as or re-injection as a new plastic product. So in order to solve the problem, government is doing what industry probably should have done a few years ago, which is to say we've got to stop using black plastic.
Right, right. So I'll just move the slide here to just go and talk about these deadlines now, because you referenced that, and I think that's a really important point for all of our attendees today, is to understand what exactly happened when. So we had those bans approved in June 2022, but the actual manufacture and import of those products, that ban has now come into effect as of December 20th, 2022. And so now what we have to do is we have to sell through all of those products in inventory between now and December 20th, 2023. But again, as we talked about earlier, that creates some challenges associated with making sure that we have the right product available, doesn't it? So
I can't imagine that any company would have 12 months supply of any of these products in inventory. So the December 20th, 2023 date may be moot. It may be that those products will just run out probably in the next 3 or 4 months and will not be available because you can't manufacture them in Canada and you can't import them into Canada. So
exactly. So just in the interest of time, we need to move on and start talking about some of the critical category alternatives. And with that, we will have Paul join us. Paul, I know you're going to talk to us about the world of plastic straws,
right,
and other things.
Yeah, thank you, Margot. So we'll just go through the categories. So in the plastic straw category, like Colin was suggesting, there are multiple substrates and materials that are being eliminated. Our answer to that is paper straws in various sizes and colors.
Paul, don't those melt in your drink?
Not anymore.
Right? I mean, I think a lot of people think that about them, but it's not the case anymore, is it?
Yeah, there used to be two key issues with paper straws. You know, the degradation of the straw in the liquid, and the second was, you know, color and inks leaching into the drinks. Both of those manufacturing processes have been improved, and we're here to say that paper straws are the future of the straw category. So we'll just go to the next one. So the next category, again, Colin cites multiple different substrates of hard to recycle plastics, polypropylene, polystyrene, PET, CPLA. These products are hard to recycle and very difficult to identify different substrates. So picking one substrate that may work for the market, you can't identify them. So we've created an alternative in birchwood cutlery. It is compostable, and we've offered 13 different SKUs in the category of cutlery. I'm glad to report that inventory is here, and we're ready for business on the cutlery side.
That's good to hear, and I know birchwood is highly a highly renewable substrate because of the fast growth of that particular species, and that carries right into stir sticks as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, stir sticks is the same story as cutlery and straws, hard to recycle plastics. So we've positioned ourselves in the birchwood category. These products have been available for years, but they're becoming more of the forefront now due to the plastics ban. Thank you.
Well, and going
Okay.
back to plastics, let's talk about bags.
Bags. There are early adopters in the paper bag side of the business. Supermarkets specifically have already started the shift. In redistribution, obviously plastic is less expensive, but manufacturers, like Colin suggested, are not able to stockpile 12 months of inventory in their facilities due to space constraints and other things. So paper is available. We have rope handle bags. We have stock car order bags in the standard sizes. And, if customers want, we have reusable bags available for the marketplace.
Hey, Paul.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Paul, could you just explain what Colin told us about the claims on plastic forks that are still in the market right now, but plastic cutlery?
Yeah, sure. So there are manufacturers that are claiming that they can withstand the first round of government regulation on products. So cutlery, for example, I believe it's like 150 washes in a commercial dishwasher. The government had to start somewhere with setting rules and regulations. Again, those products, very difficult to identify one product that could work in that environment versus all the other products that don't. So, we suspect that the government is going to circle back around on those legislations, and they will close the loopholes. So manufacturers that are trying to get around this today are going to struggle to do that in the near future. So there's certainly more to come on that, Terry.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. So we're going to move into food serviceware, and I know you've got a lot to tell us about that, because not only are there different varieties, you've also different varieties of substrate, but you've also got cost implications and also market trends. So maybe you can just walk us through that.
Sure, Margot. So in a large category in the food service redistribution market is, hinged containers. We today are starting to dwindle down our inventories. Manufacturers are dwindling the inventories on foam. Extruded polystyrene is a difficult product to recycle. So we're introducing multiple different substrates to the marketplace. And we've put them in this diagram to show you least expensive to most expensive substrates. So mineral filled polypropylene seems to be a least expensive category to replace foam, and it shifts into bagasse. And the second piece that we're doing is we're determining where the market's going to go as a choice from one substrate to another. So we believe there's a significant shift from foam to mineral filled polypropylene. There's a shift, that's about 60% of the market. And then you can see the other percentages: bagasse, clear polypropylene, and then bagasse, no added PFAS, and food boxes. So as you get to the right of the
So I know, Paul, sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off there, but to say that I know you're going to go into a little more detail about what each of these substrates actually are, but I think the conclusion you're drawing here is that the MFPP, or the mineral filled polypropylene, is going to be that sort of is it maybe that sweet spot between functionality and cost? Is that pretty much where is that why we're making that that assertion or that prediction?
Yeah, I
Should say.
absolutely, Margot. I believe mineral filled polypropylene and bagasse are going to be the leaders
Okay.
in the category change from extruded polystyrene. So you can see here, folks, in the mineral filled polypropylene, this is a light gauging aspect of sustainability. There's less plastic in this product, up to 50% less plastic. And there are other products in it that are fillers to make up the rest of what the container consists of. This also is a leak-proof substrate, so it performs better in a liquid environment than other materials like bagasse. And at the moment, the end of life on this is a polypropylene number 5 recyclable material. So
And Paul, that would perform well with grease too,
yes,
as well as
grease,
moisture.
microwave, and cold environments.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thank you, Margot.
And so let's talk about bagasse. And I think a lot of people, I certainly, I could say I was under the impression that bagasse was sugarcane, but it's actually can come from a variety of different sources.
Right. Thank you. It could be any pulp material that you can break down into an environment where you can compress it, put pressure and heat into the fiber, and you can form containers. So don't just think that it's sugarcane or wood pulp. It can be any of those pulp substrates. So there are many different fibrous materials that can be put into this, and there will be pressure in the marketplace shifting all that foam business over to all these new substrates. So they're going to need as many substrates as possible. The other piece with bagasse specifically is it is compostable, as you know,
but not in your backyard.
Not in your backyard, right? So it is commercial composting at the moment. We'll go
And
to the next one.
I know that as we go into the Q&A, probably Colin will talk a little bit more about that because, you know, in terms of end-of-life management, there's a lot of development that is happening and still needs to happen around industrial composting. But I'm sure we'll come back to that in the Q&A. So clear polypropylene. I think everyone's familiar with that.
Right. In the Hinged container category, this is 100% virgin polypropylene. It's clear, so there's no color issues involved with it. Black plastic is not here. It's clear on the bottom, clear on the top. Microwave safe, leak proof again, because it is a plastic substrate, and it is recyclable number 5 polypropylene. So basically a lot of the same attributes as mineral filled. This next category is interesting. There are 2 types of bagasse in the Canadian market. There is bagasse with PFAS, which we already looked at, and then there is no intentionally added PFAS. Products made without PFAS contained in the material. And you ask, what is PFAS?
That is going to be my question, Paul. Yes, tell us about that.
So I'm not going to pronounce that. Everybody can read it. But essentially, in Canada today, there is no active legislation against PFAS. Okay, but Colin can say that there certainly are things under review. Maybe Colin, you can just add to that.
Yeah, there's a great deal of review going on in the United States. They're the leader in concern over PFAS. We expect the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency will come out with draft legislation or regulations later this year. And as soon as they do, I bet Canada will jump on the same initiative, and it'll be a North American ban on any use of PFAS to do with packaging materials or even with some kinds of plastic products.
And if
Okay.
I could just add, Margot,
Sure.
one more thing.
Mhm.
Bunzl, R3 Canada has decided that we're going to offer both substrates, PFAS and PFAS free at the moment. The marketplace around us is offering the standard bagasse, so we're going to offer both, so customers can migrate to it. The last category, albeit small, the food box category is out there. We're seeing it in the food service restaurant establishments that are using, both takeout and after in-house experience for takeaway. So those are our
Okay.
options in that category.
Great. Thanks so much, Paul. So in the interest of time, I know we need to get wrapped up here so that we can get into our Q&A, but we are quickly going to just look at some, very quickly run through some other products and substrates. So if we look here at the black plastic, obviously we're seeing white plastic alternatives starting to proliferate, right, Paul?
Absolutely. We're seeing white and clear containers starting to take over the black plastic marketplace. And this is in supermarket and in redistribution for sure. Other categories on the left, we have foam, extruded polystyrene, and you can see our alternatives that we've designed and built with other substrates that are more feasible from a sustainability aspect.
And to really support the food service side with a good fit for purpose, a good food experience, and yet it's still in compliance.
Absolutely.
That's great information. Thank you, Paul, and thank you, Colin. For more information, you can certainly refer to our federal government's technical guidelines on single-use plastics, and you'll certainly have that. Link available to you in the material that we're going to follow. We work with some fantastic brand partners that all are bringing exceptional new, environmentally preferable, innovative packaging options. And Paul works extensively with them, from ecosystems to Pactive, Eco Packaging, GenPack, Dart, among others, are key partners in developing new assortments for our customers. And I think really that's where we want to end up before we just jump into our Q&A, is that, I know that our attendees on the call are looking for, what are the steps in developing that new assortment. And I think what we really want, and I see, Terry, you're on the call, is we really would suggest talking to our R3 representatives so that you can get a sense of an assessment of your current assortment, and then some recommendations around the best fit for purpose alternatives, right?
Absolutely, Margot. Our teams are being trained now. I think Paul explained too, a lot of this stuff is coming in. It's been on order, but our sales reps are being updated on a weekly basis on ETAs, what's hitting. We have product packs that marketing's develop. We're here to help you guys develop your alternative. So please reach out to us.
And then the last thing is that, once you have determined, you've worked with your R3 representative to develop your assortment, to also then look at what information do you need to support your salespeople in presenting to your customers. So information on the new legislation and planet-friendlier substrates, packaging formats, product options, product collateral, all of those things. And you can access those through R3's marketing toolkit. And again, you can access that through your rep. And of course, the last thing is to schedule training sessions for your sales organizations, because I know our R3 team will do that for you as well. So with that, a big thank you to our presenters and to everyone who's attended. We apologize for going over just a little bit, but it's an interesting topic, as you know, and an awful lot of information to present. So I think we want, with that, to go to our first question. And our first question is being blocked by an annoying window that's popped up on screen. So let's see if we can get rid of that. There we are. So what exemptions are there for healthcare? So great question. Paul, would you like to speak to that? And I'm sure, Colin, maybe you have some thoughts as well.
I'll let Colin speak to it first, and then maybe I can interject.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to take the time to go through all the details, but there are exemptions for healthcare institutions that require some of these products for their specific needs for patient care. So if you're a distributor supplying the healthcare industry, it's worth going to the technical guidelines booklet that you've already mentioned, Margot. Take a look at it, and it will explain all the different possibilities that exist for an exemption, but they are only for real healthcare institutions.
Right, and I think an example of that would be the flexible straw. I think would be probably a good example of that. But again, for specifics on that, you should certainly refer to those technical guidelines. We have another question. Would you recommend prioritizing substrates or end of life when selecting plastic alternatives? Wow, that is a great question. Who wants to take that one?
Can you say that again, Margot? That was a really good one.
Right. So the question is, should we prioritize selecting the substrate or its end of life management status when selecting an alternative? So, I mean, maybe we can think of an example. An example might be maybe a compostable product in an area of the country that doesn't have industrial composting available. So
yeah, this is a really interesting question, Margot, because I think it's unfortunately the answer is both. If you look at the federal regulations, you're looking primarily at substrates. That's the power they have to regulate by designating certain substrates as harmful to the environment under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act. But the activity that is going on for extended producer responsibility is very much focused on end-of-life management of specific product types, and it matters less what the package or product is made of, and more what it looks like and how it can be sorted in a material recycling facility. So unfortunately, I think it's unfortunately for all of us, it's a matter of looking at both and making recommendations on both the type of product and the substrate from which it's constructed.
Well, Colin, we have another question for you now that is right up your alley, and that is there a difference between biodegradable and compostable?
Yes, there is. It's a big difference. In fact, it's in two characteristics. One is that the term biodegradable is not defined by regulations or by standards. And therefore, unfortunately, all kinds of products in the marketplace are claiming to be biodegradable, but they don't biodegrade in landfills, and they don't biodegrade when they're littered in the environment. Federal guidance that is coming out soon will be that the term biodegradable should not be used on any packaging material. Compostable is a subset of biodegradable. Compostable products are generally actually biodegradable as well. Composting is a form of biodegradation, but compostable is a specific approach to biodegradation in a compost facility, either an industrial one, which is used for municipal collections, as well as collections from the ICI sector, or home composting is also a form of biodegradation. Compostable products will likely be allowed, but at the moment there's a lot of discussion going on, and temporarily no differentiation is allowed between a recyclable plastic and a compostable plastic. So if the recyclable plastic is not allowed, the compostable plastic will not be allowed either. That, for example, applies to drinking straws. Unfortunately, compostable drinking straws, which are an excellent product, compostable plastic drinking straws, I should say, are not being allowed for the time being, but hopefully will be allowed at some future point by the federal government.
Right.
Great. Thank you, Colin. So we have another question around paper products versus non-paper products. Should we be concerned with the CO2 emissions in the production of paper products versus non-paper products? Again, that's for you, Colin, I think.
Yeah, I was just thinking that's going to be one of the next issues that comes along. Should we be concerned today? No, because we don't have any environmental or climate change regulations affecting products at the moment. But when we get a climate change strategy for the manufacturing sector, those kinds of regulations will almost certainly come into play. And there will be concern about the greenhouse gas emissions that come from manufacturing of paper products. There will also likely be concern about the amount of forest product that we are using to replace the plastic that we have used in the past. Can't provide any real answers on that yet because we don't know how the government is going to regulate it. But let's have a webinar on that one next October. Which time
I have no doubt
that information.
Thank you, Colin. I have no doubt we'll be having more webinars on these topics for sure, because I mean, clearly, and I think everyone on the call would agree that it's plainly obvious that, you know, there isn't that you can't flip a switch and just solve all of these problems. So, you know, things are getting implemented in stages, and of course, it's always going to be an evolving situation. We have a couple of other questions that are going to call on your expertise, Paul. So first of all, do you have customizable reusable bags?
Thanks, Margot. Absolutely. We have sourced vendors that are ethically responsible, and we've audited plants to make sure that they comply with certain aspects of working conditions around the world. We can source anything that the customer wants. We just need you to work with your R3 sales rep, and we can get you customized quotes for anything that you need.
Fantastic. So the next one is all about the paper straws. We'll come back to that one, Paul, because the question that's being asked is, are there any alternatives to those? Because the flavor, apparently coming from, or the assumption is coming from the glue, is still posing an issue with some of our customers. So any thoughts on that, or do we know of some products that maybe have minimized that effect that we can offer?
Yeah, certainly the food grade glues and inks have improved significantly since the beginning of the paper straw. I think because of what Colin stated earlier about compostable plastic or biodegradable plastic, there's still a lot of answers that we need before we can move forward with anything of that nature. So currently, all forms of plastic are lumped in together. And we can't differentiate, and paper is the alternative. I have seen a couple of other concepts or ideas, but it's extremely expensive and not necessarily a renewable resource. So for now, we're in the paper straw business currently.
But we do have a number of different products available in that offering that people can certainly try and test as well, right? But it sounds like, just as Colin said, you know, this continues to evolve. So, and I know, Paul, that you and your team are working with a wide range of product developers and manufacturers around the world that really are on the leading edge of the very latest in terms of what's coming out. So the minute something else is available, we'll be right on the front line there testing it out on behalf of our customers, right?
And yeah, and Margot, maybe I can add, as all the different substrates, everything is evolving. The market is changing. People are coming up with new concepts, new manufacturing capabilities. We're at the forefront of that. Our worldwide sourcing capabilities are bringing new products to market every day, and we suspect that our evolution of our product assortment will continue to evolve, grow, and change. So we'll be communicating with customers through sales about all these different things that are happening at breakneck speed today.
Well, and as Colin says, more webinars to come. We'll be calling on you both for sure. We have one last question, and that is, Colin, what new regulations can we expect through 2023 and beyond? We touched a little bit on that in the beginning, but maybe you can give us your thoughts.
Right. There's probably three major categories. One is recycled content regulations. They're expected out sometime this spring. They will obviously not come into effect immediately. I mean, the government does recognize that time is required to make transitions of this order of magnitude. So I would predict that we will have at least 18 months and possibly longer after the regulations are published to actually implement the regulations. But we'll know by midsummer at the latest what we have to do in terms of recycled content and which packaging materials and products are affected by that. Second is labeling. We've already talked about the biodegradable label, but the recyclable label has become a bit of a pariah as well, because people have labeled things as recyclable when they are technically recyclable, but there is no plant available in Canada or even close to Canada to actually do the recycling. The government has said that in future you will only be allowed to label something as recyclable if end users have the ability to access a program for recycling of that product. It's going to take some years to build enough of a recycling industry in North America to be able to undertake that kind of recycling, but the rules for it are likely to come out later this year, so we at least know what we're going to have to do in future. Thirdly, I've already mentioned extended producer responsibility. The revised version of Ontario EPR takes effect beginning in June of this year, with an implementation period running through till 2026. British Columbia is already moving in the same direction, and some other provinces are going to be announcing EPR programs of various kinds throughout 2023. So those are the three big things, and they have pretty major impact on anyone who has anything to do with packaging or single-use plastics.
Thank you, Colin. And I would just add for all of our attendees that you will be receiving the R3 e-news updates on a regular basis, and in those updates you will be hearing more from us on this topic, and certainly updates, and we'll have information from Colin and from other experts as well to share with you. So please stay tuned for that. And as well, I can just say, if I may just say on behalf of my department, we would love to hear from you in terms of other information that you would like to receive from us, because we're developing new content for you all the time. We will be, shifting that into even higher gear around sustainability and associated issues as the year continues. So we would certainly love your input and your feedback in terms of what you're seeing. We hope that it's useful, but we want to, hear back from you in terms of how we can make it even better. So that's it for today. Thank you again for joining us. Thank you very much to our presenters, Colin and Paul. Great information, and we look forward to calling upon you again soon. Thanks, everyone.